everybody, welcome back to 100 Blocks in 2025. Today we're going to make one of Tula's blocks and we're going to continue on with our fussy cutting fabrics and blending color. So let's take a look at what we have. Okay, here is our Tula block. It's block number 76 on page 171. And here is the block breakdown of what we're looking at. And what I wanted to do, or what's in this book here, is a little fussy cut pattern. So there's a print here and a couple of strips in a square of that print. Then we have the frame around that print, which Tula's used yellow. And then we have the additional border on the outside. So this is a purple block, and I have chosen this multicolored purple fabric floral here. And so what I needed of that floral was going to be it was one 2.5 inch square. I also needed a 1.5 inch square. So here's my 2.5, here's my 1.5. I also need a 1.5 by 4.5 inch strip, which is here, and a 1.5 by 5.5 inch strip, which is here. And then we're gonna have our next print, which in this case, she has in the yellow. I've chosen this purple right here. And of that print, I needed two 1.5 by 2.5 inch blocks and two 1.5 by 4.5 inch little rectangles. And then I have my outside piece, and of my outside piece, which Tula has is this green right here, I need one that is 1.5 by 6.5. I need a 1.5 by 3.5 and a 1.5 inch square. So we have all of the parts. So let's lay out the block the way that it needs to be laid out. So I'm going to start with my 2.5 inch square, and you can see that my next print that goes around it sort of surrounds it like a frame. So I'm going to put those two blocks on either side of it as shown in this little picture. And then I'm going to put my longer pieces around the outside, which will fit when we get our seam allowances in there. So that's how those pieces go together. So in order to start this block, that's probably what I will do. I will add the sides and then the top and bottom to that so I can finish that out as a square. And then to add to that, well, we're gonna have, once the square gets together, we have a piece here of our next color, which is actually our print, that is exactly the size that it needs to be to go right on the side of this block. And that's gonna be our 1.5 by 4.5 inch little piece right here. So when everything goes together, this will fit on the side. And then we have the longer strip that fits right here on the bottom. And then down sort of on the bottom end, in order to make this portion fit, we have 3 pieces. And we're gonna start with this medium print here. So we're gonna need our, I believe that's our 3.5, isn't it? Yep, our 1.5 by 3.5. And then we're gonna add in that single 1 inch square of our colored fabric and our single 1 inch square of that same print. And then once we get that strip done and added to the bottom, then we'll add our final 6.5 inch strip to the side. So hopefully that makes sense. So we're gonna do this very slowly in piecemeal. So the first thing I'm gonna do is take my square. I'm gonna add sides to it to make it a rectangle and put the other 2 rectangles on top of it, and that will give me a square. So step 1 is complete. Now I'm going to add the top and the bottom pieces. So step 2 is complete. We now have a square, and now this part is going to fit right on the side of it. Step 3 is complete, and now our next piece is going to fit right on the bottom. All right, we are back to a square. Before we add any other parts, we have to make this bottom row. So I'm going to have to sew this to this to this. We'll come back and add it to the bottom. So now that our pieces are all sewn, you can see our block fits right on the bottom of that. And now the final act for this block is to put this last strip on and turn it back into a square. And we're done. So how cute is this? Here's our purple block for our 100 Blocks of 2025, and it matches our beginner quilt just perfectly. So I hope you found this block super easy. So all we have to remember is sometimes we have to look at the block and decide which piece will fit where, so we can decide which one to put on first and next and so on. But this one was pretty easy. You know, you can find out more about me, all the retreats, and including what's going on with our beginner quilt series all the way over at cabinquilters.com.